I mentioned you're an independent thinker. You're not anti-business. I don't think you have beef with Elon Musk on any great long-standing principle. And yet, on the other hand, he himself says he didn't meet all his goals. He leaves in a kind of a muddled message. And the trade war that Donald Trump is launching doesn't seem to be benefiting American business yet. Your thoughts, and are these related problems?
I mean, no, they're not related. First of all, I think if you were to talk to Elon Musk privately, he would be a severe critic of the way the Trump administration has approached the trade war and the tariffs. So I think you really have to separate those two things. I think we can start with Musk or we can go to tariffs, but you mentioned Musk, and I think that
Musk,
it's important
start with Musk.
Musk is all right. So I think Musk is a cautionary tale for every person that would ever think that intervening in politics. And I think as a compliment to your journalism, not to butter your bread here, but I do think that if you're going to get involved with politics at a national level, you have to be prepared to be associated with policies you do not believe in. And I think that Musk was a little bit naive in the expectation that he could sort of waltz in and offer his 2 cents and not get tarred and feathered with everything else that was associated with the Trump administration. And I'm sure if you talk to Elon Musk privately, he would say the way that the tariffs were handled, even if the tariffs are well-intended relative to restoring the labor market in the U.S., relative to the political pandering that the tariffs represent to the base, the way that they were handled was catastrophic for the markets. The markets have recovered, by the way, but that Musk basically comes out of this looking naive and ultimately did a lot of damage to very valuable enterprises. I think we all believe in Musk's missions relative to EVs, relative to solar power, relative to all those ambitions. And it's unfortunate to see them get mucked up in the standard mess that is American politics. And I think that he learned that the hard way.
I hear you on all that. And you kind of make a distinction that, as you said, he's smart in certain ways, but he's incredibly naive to think that he's co-president or that he has his own platform. You work for the government. You work for this administration. I want to play you Jamie Dimon on the China part. Take a look.
We have problems, and we got to deal with them. And then the biggest one underlying both that is the enemy within. I'm not as worried about China. China is a potential adversary. What I really worry about is us. Can we get our own act together, our own values, our own capability, our own management?
I serve this up to you because you know that world, Dylan, and a lot of people. Did we lose Dylan in Milan? I'm not sure. Dylan, you can still hear me?
I can, loud and clear. My apologies. How are you?
No, you're great. Great to have you. I was just saying, and folks, bear with us because we got international connection, but a lot of Wall Street folks thought they had this figured out and they would get what they wanted out of Trump. And it's proving to be a rougher ride, what you just alluded to. And so we turn to the tariffs and business people, some of whom are broadly more conservative in economic policy, broadly more Republican, if not always MAGA. There is some buyer's remorse seeping out. And then there's the hidden remorse that isn't public because people are worried about retaliation. What do you see there?
I see a market that has deemed Donald Trump and the Trump administration completely lacking in credibility. If you look at the stock market, if you look at the bond market, they now view everything that is stated regarding Trump and tariffs as basically empty rhetoric. So if you look at the market's response in April, where they actually took the policy suggestions seriously, there was a repricing of the value of all global business down. We all saw it. Then we've seen the walkbacks from the Trump administration where it becomes more of a it's a TV event. Oh, we're going to make a deal. Oh, it's 50%. Oh, it's no for 0%, all these things. And so at this point, the reason the stock market is basically at the same level it was a few months ago, well before the trade war, is because the stock market has decided none of this is actually going to happen, or it's going to happen to such a limited degree that it really is nothing more than Trump rhetoric pandering to his base, and it's not so much an economic policy. I think that the soundbite that you offered up, which is that it does introduce a level of uncertainty to business in general on the outside chance some of this actually does happen. But if you look at the financial markets, they're saying this is rhetoric, it is not policy. And that is basically a insult to the president.
And when's the last time, or in your adult life and career, do you remember the markets getting to this point, disbelieving a president and an administration this much?
I mean, honestly, yes. I think American politics has become so enslaved to the rhetorical value of policy rather than the economic value of policy. I mean, part of the reason why I feel like Donald Trump is even the president is because I believe the Democratic Party has failed catastrophically to deliver meaningful policy, that both parties are so beholden now to rhetorical pandering to their base that we've actually lost what I would call the professional or executive function in our government, which should actually administrate in a professional manner. And the Trump administration, I think, is probably the most extreme example of that, but it's just the latest iteration of political rhetoric that panders for votes from the extremes on the left or the right, rather than policies that actually advocate for the value or the enterprise that is America. And this is just kind of the most extreme example. But I think the reason this exists is because we've been in the seesaw. I mean, you and I worked together at MSNBC 10 or 15 years ago, and we were seeing the beginning of this. It goes back decades now. And just the longer the cycle continues, the worse it gets. And I think that you're seeing a complete discounting of the Trump administration's credibility relative to the trade war by the financial markets.
And so that brings us to the lens, because how people understand a problem affects whether they think, A, it's fixable, and then what the solution could be. In other words, if you see a problem as like a tornado or a hurricane, you can't stop it. And so you kind of say, we'll deal with it as best we can, right? Whereas if you see a problem like engine failure in a plane and you spot the engine failure before the takeoff, you fix the problem. You avoid at least flying. I say that to be as simple as possible. If Americans view this as a Trump thing and a Trump-Musk thing, and Musk is in and out, and it's a political thing, and it's that lens of those, quote, bad guys is how some people view it, that's one thing. But if this is merely a symptom of a larger breakdown in our ability to have any semblance of honest politics and discourse in the best sense, then Trump is a symptom, and if you don't fix the underlying issues around how we do democracy, how we discourse with each other, and whether the system is fully bought, as you've argued in your writings, or not, then we miss out on even fixing that. Do you think it's more the latter? We have a bigger structural problem here, regardless of Trump.
I do. I believe that the extremity and absurdity even of the Trump rhetoric, and then the walkbacks, and then the rhetoric, and then the walkbacks, is nothing more than the most extreme expression of the degradation of the overall executive function in American leadership that has been accruing for a long time because of the power of the extremes, because the extreme left or the extreme right has too much of an influence over who becomes the candidate. In this case, the candidate became Donald Trump, and the president became Donald Trump. And that's why, by the way, the financial markets, what were the financial markets doing during the Biden administration? At or near records. What are the financial markets doing during the Trump administration? At or near records. Why? Because they actually don't believe that the ability to follow through and implement coherent executive policy exists